Hello, Honors Chem fans. This is Lab 20, determination of an empirical formula, in which you are going to put together magnesium ribbon. Here's a big long spool of it, as pictured in your lab. And I'm going to be giving you a piece about this long, about 20 centimeters in length. You're going to be heating up magnesium in a crucible with a lid at a very high temperature and observing the product that is produced, measuring your reactants, measuring your products, and finding out what you get in the end. So let's take a little closer look at the lab. Notice that you will be using, as I said, crucible. You'll be using safety goggles, and you have done this before. You have burned magnesium in a flame. Do not look directly at the burning magnesium. You're going to look off to the side. So to help you out, you're probably going to be wanting to using some crucible tongs. So here in the lab, I can grab them. Crucible tongs can be used to lift the lid, to peek inside at the contents, to also remove the lid, and to move that crucible right down to the tabletop if necessary. So have those handy. You never want to touch a hot crucible. You will be really sorry. This is going to get super hot. In fact, the bottom, if you have your setup angled just right, when you light your flame, it should heat up the bottom of the crucible so that you get a red hot surface. The hottest part of the flame hits the bottom of the crucible, right in here. Okay, so safety equipment, check. A crucible with a properly fitting lid. Let's talk a moment about that. So this is a rather large crucible so that you can see it, and this lid fits on it nicely. When you have this in position, the lid covers over the edge of the crucible, and it sits flat up on top. So it doesn't sit edge to edge. This, for example, obviously is a lid that's too small. It fits inside the crucible. But there are some that are edge to edge. You don't want that. So make sure that you have a nicely fitting lid on top of your crucible. It says to wash and dry the crucible down here. Do not do that. I repeat, do not do that. That will complicate things. The bottom of the crucible will absorb some water. We don't want that to happen, so do not do that. You're going to set up an apparatus such as I have assembled here. You're going to have a tripod. You're going to have a clay triangle in which you will sit the crucible, and we'll put the magnesium in just a moment. Weigh and record the mass of the empty crucible and its lid, of course. Loosely coil a piece of magnesium ribbon. Okay, so here's the magnesium ribbon. This will not fit in here as is. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to wrap the magnesium ribbon around a pen or a pencil. I do not have one here at the moment, but let's say, and I would not recommend doing around your finger because you can get splinters from the magnesium, but in the absence of a pencil, I'm going to take that risk for you, for your pre-lab. Make a coil out of the magnesium so that it's like this, then it drops and fits neatly into the crucible. Like that. It needs to be all within the crucible. You're going to start to heat that crucible until the magnesium ignites. Okay, now once you get your burner fired up, what I would suggest is, with the lid off, is that you gently kind of warm the crucible. We're going to do that so that we slowly raise the temperature of the crucible so that we hope we don't crack it, because in a few moments we're going to fire that up really hot, and we don't want the crucible to crack because then we can lose our product. So you're going to first warm it for about a minute. Just get around all the sides. You can actually hold that burner at the edges. It doesn't matter if the clay triangle gets hot. You can heat all around that crucible, and then after about a minute you can go ahead and make sure that the hottest part of the flame underneath is at the base, the bottom of the crucible. You're leaving the lid off for the moment. It says, when the magnesium begins to burn, step 7, place the lid on the crucible tightly. Remove the burner. So at this point, this lid is not hot. I can put it on there because that's going to be burning super bright. You don't want to look at it, but it's also going to produce some smoke, and that smoke contains part of your product. We don't want to lose it. So put the lid on. And when you put the lid on your crucible, of course, you're smothering it. You're preventing it from receiving any oxygen from the air. So now what we're going to have to do is step 8. Begin heating the crucible again, because you've taken out this burner and you let it burn, don't put it out, just pull it out from underneath the crucible. You're going to return that burner under there, and at this point you're going to peek under the lid of your crucible. So peek, and if it flares up, you're going to close the lid and look away and wait another minute. And then you're going to peek, and it's likely that your magnesium will no longer be burning. You can leave the lid askew. There's a good SAT word for you, askew. So you can kind of tip it like I've got here, in which case you can heat it again. More air should get into that crucible. It's going to catch on fire again. Take your tongs, push the lid on tightly again. And then you're going to keep doing that until all the magnesium looks like a gray white powder, until it doesn't flare up anymore in flame. Looks like a gray white powder. Notice that the directions say it's going to take you about 10 or 15 minutes to do that. At which point you're going to have to cool your crucible. Do not weigh a hot crucible, much like you wouldn't weigh a hot evaporating dish, because you will damage the balances. When you're done, you can dispose of your product in the trash can. It's solid, and then you're not going to wash out the crucible. No water in crucible. All you're going to do is you're going to scrape it out with a little bit of a paper towel or a scoopula. Scrape out any solid and return the crucible where you got it from. Only 3 pieces of data in your data table. This lab is not intensive in terms of data collection. Right here, this isn't going to take up a lot of time or space, but what is going to take you some time is the calculations. So, happy data collecting. See you in lab.